Hi, and welcome to the February edition of The Coffee House, where in the next hour we ask, should cable companies be required to share their lines with internet service providers? Also, those contact lenses and glasses may be a hassle, but is laser surgery really a sight better? Introducing a second look, in this edition, TV producer Rocky Kistner discusses his Frontlines documentary, Justice for Sale. Plus, too many students and too little room at the new Blair High School in Silver Spring. We've got the world music of Rachel and Jacqui, movement with a message, the choreography of Hellenius J. Wilkins, and a poem by Miriam, Morsel, Nathan. Hi, and welcome to the Coffee House. Fairfax City has it, and Montgomery County is thinking about having it. It is open access, a requirement that cable companies share their lines with firms that want to provide high-speed internet access. Cable companies like Comcast call open access a bad idea. They argue there's plenty of high-speed modem competition already. Some internet service providers and public interest groups disagree. As yet, at least, the public isn't exactly rising up over the issue, maybe because right now only about 1 in 1,000 Americans accesses the web on high-speed modems. Some are cable modems offered over cable lines. Others are digital subscriber lines, DSL, offered over standard telephone lines. A cable modem flies at up to 10 megabytes per second, as long as there isn't a lot of traffic over your neighborhood cable line. Low-end DSL is way faster than your dial-up modem, way slower than a cable modem. But with DSL, you don't have to worry that other users will slow you down. Bell Atlantic's 640K DSL is priced competitively with cable modems. Wondering how cable modems and DSL render video? Here's a cable modem, a bit jerky by telecast standards. And now, here's a higher-end DSL with speeds up to 7.1 kilobytes per second. Note that we tested it on a faster computer than we used to demo the cable modem. It's pretty smooth, but at around $200 a month, about 4 times the price of the low-end DSL and cable modems. That's the technology. Here's the question. Should cable companies be required to make their lines available to internet service providers? So far, a dozen jurisdictions in 6 states have enacted open access laws. Here to discuss open access are Wes Heppler of the Cable Telecommunications Association, Jane Lawton, Cable Communications Administrator for the Montgomery County Office of Consumer Affairs, and Kristan Van Hook, a partner at Simon Strategies in D.C. and a representative of the openNET Coalition. Welcome to the Coffee House.
Thank you.
Kristan, let's start with you. You think the cable companies like Comcast should be required to open their lines to internet service providers. Why?
Yes. The key here, I think, is that broadband internet access will be the core telecommunications service in the future, especially for people in their homes. Currently, many people get high-speed access at their office, but broadband access in the home is going to be essential for shopping, e-commerce, all sorts of applications, medical applications, potentially home energy management, and other services that people will need to use in their home.
Why do you say essential? We seem to get by right now without it.
Well, I think it's fair to say that people are moving, more and more services are moving to the internet. And without an internet connection, and in the future a broadband connection, you won't be able to access those services. And often those are services that not only include entertainment, but include job-related and community-related and other services that people find essential. What we're arguing, we represent about 1,000 ISPs across the country. There are about 6,000.
ISP, Internet Service Provider.
Internet Service Providers, right. These are the people that connect you to the internet. They buy access to the telephone network in order to get you there. But they offer service and they differentiate their service on a number of different fronts, including price, which is very important for a lot of people. A lot of the independent internet service providers offer the lowest price. So our argument is that the internet's working fine as it is today, and we think that as cable companies enter the internet world, they should offer their services in a similar way, that they should allow for competitive ISPs to be chosen by consumers over that network. And I think one important point for people is that there are essentially two wires into your home today. The telephone wire, which people use for the internet currently, and the cable wire. Those are really the only two wires that can be used for this service. While there are wireless and satellite alternatives that we are hopeful will reach residences, it will be many years, most analysts believe, until they get there. So in the short term, you have two wires, and the question is, should you have a choice of different internet service providers over those wires, such as you have today on the internet over the telephone wire, or should you be required to select and pay for the internet service provider that is the choice of the cable company, owned or affiliated with the cable company? And what we suggest is that internet service providers across the country be allowed to offer broadband service, purchasing capacity from the cable operator, and then offering a diversity of choices for people for broadband cable in the home.
Why not, Wes?
Well, I think our position is exactly as you stated initially in the introduction, which is there's already a lot of competition for broadband internet access. Bell Atlantic has deployed their DSL service that was described earlier significantly throughout Montgomery County. Star Power, a competitive broadband access provider, has begun construction in Montgomery County, and eventually Comcast, assuming they get the transfer of the franchise, will also deploy it. So in Montgomery County, you'll have at a minimum 3 well-financed, fully deployed broadband access facilities. And a key thing to keep in mind, Mark, is that the majority of the market is traditional dial-up. And even though I agree with Kristan, over time there will be a migration to broadband, even the most optimistic estimates of that migration is in 3 years approximately 20%. So what you will have is 3 highly competitive facilities all fighting for that small market in the first 2 to 3 years. And I think that when you look at that and the onset of satellite internet access capabilities, you have plenty of competition for ISPs to choose their access to the high-speed internet access service.
Plenty of competition, Kristan?
No, I think not, because the key here is that people have a choice of access provider, of internet service provider, over the wire. In other words, the wire is 1 or 2, even potentially with 3 wires or 1 wireless possibility to the home. The free market really can't work. People can't vote with their feet and choose an alternative provider unless they have multiple providers over each wire. So our argument is that the internet today works because people have choice. They can choose AOL, they can choose Mindspring, they can choose Airels. If they don't have that choice, if they lose that choice in the cable environment, we don't think that today's internet, with all of its choice and innovation, will continue.
Well, but I guess our point would be is that when you have at least 3 competitors out there, and keep in mind this is in addition to the dial-up. No one loses dial-up. This is a new service, the broadband is, that when you have at least 3 providers of that ISPs will be competitive as to who gets onto those services. None of those 3 providers, Bell Atlantic, Star Power, or Comcast, are going to want to lose subscribers. Their goal, each of them, is to have as many as possible. So if an ISP has something to bring to the table, each of those providers is going to want to get that ISP on their service.
Jane, Montgomery County is looking at this question now. What's its current status in the county, and what is the process for making a determination about open access?
Yeah, well, the county executive has received an application for a transfer of ownership for the cable system to Comcast. And in the process of considering the transfer, there will be public dialogue and public hearings, and we'll be informing the elected officials about the issues that come up. And mainly we look at what kinds of things consumers want in their cable company and in their cable services. So this is one issue that's on the table and will be discussed at our public hearings and during the process. So public officials will be weighing in on this. The county executive will make a recommendation to the county council, and then the county council will make a decision as to whether or not to approve the transfer and whether or not to put any kind of conditions on it.
Are you hearing a lot of comment from citizens at this point?
We hear a fair amount, but this is not the only issue they'll be looking at. Obviously, they look at issues like customer service and issues about advanced services and about the kinds of experience they've already had with the cable company. So open access is definitely an issue that we're hearing about, but it's not the only issue.
And it's an issue that we're hearing about elsewhere in the country, too. Apparently, it's on the agenda in Los Angeles, I guess, as an issue. And Fairfax City, when it recently enacted open access, I guess, back in November. But right now, there's no sign of competitors over the cable lines there. Is it likely that there are going to be a lot of ISP vendors that want to jump on the cable lines if they're made available?
Well, I suspect there will be ISPs that want to get on the cable lines, and as you may well know, AT&T has signed a letter of intent with Mindspring, and there are other agreements that are out there and being negotiated this time, and I think that's one of the key points, is that we believe if you simply let the marketplace work, that is what will happen. There'll be negotiations with ISPs, and as the FCC has pointed out and taken the position essentially that this is a nascent industry, this broadband. You have to let it develop before you start regulating it, before you start imposing access. Otherwise, you may very well stifle the very broadband services that you're trying to get access for these ISPs.
I guess that's going to have to be the last word. Many thanks to Montgomery County's Jane Lawton, openNET Coalition's Kristan Van Hook, and Wes Heppler of the Cable Telecom Association for joining me in the coffee house. Coming up, not for the squeamish, laser surgery to correct vision problems, the latest work by choreographer Hellenius J. Wilkins, a poem by Miriam Morsel Nathan, the world music sounds of Rachel and Jacqui, and journalist Rocky Kistner on his Frontlines documentary Justice for Sale. But first,
not even 2 years after opening its doors, the new Blair High School at Colesville Road and University Avenue in Silver Spring is facing growing pains. With a current enrollment of nearly 2,900 students, the facility is already stretched beyond capacity. At a recent meeting with parents, school officials outlined a number of options for solving Blair's overpopulation problem.
You can add capacity at Blair, or you can add capacity at other schools and move kids out of Blair, or you can build new capacity, or you can open up a closed school. A final one is that you could do some creative scheduling, such as year-round multi-track schools, which would take about 25% of the students out of the building at any one time.
One plan calls for the construction of 28 brand new classrooms here on the Blair campus. Now that would accommodate the projected 3,400 student enrollment for the 2005-2006 school year. A scaled-back version of that plan calls for 18 new classrooms. But many parents are wary of an even bigger Blair.
Every year for the last 5 years, they have underestimated the number of kids coming into our schools. We have an overcrowding problem right now. So my biggest concern is about bigness. Big is not necessarily better, and Blair is already the biggest school in the county.
Another plan calls for the opening of Norwood School, located a couple of miles north of Blair on University Boulevard. The school is currently a holding facility. Under this proposal, Northwood could serve as a 9th grade campus that feeds into Blair, or it could be used as a second high school within the Blair cluster, or Northwood itself could be at the center of a new cluster.
The neighborhoods around Northwood are predominantly white, middle class. The neighborhoods in Blair are much more diverse racially and economically.
My main concerns are that my kids get a good, high-quality education and that there be diversity in the school.
One proposal to maintain diversity and solve Blair's overcrowding problem would be to establish a new, smaller high school in Silver Spring. Under this option, students might be free to choose whether to attend the new school or Blair. The issue is now squarely before School Superintendent Jerry Wiest. Wiest will make his recommendations to the school board at the end of February. But school officials say a final decision on how to solve overcrowding at Blair is at least a year away. For the Coffee House, I'm Ross Adams.
Hello and welcome to In Sickness and in Health at the Coffee House. Let's talk about the vision thing. Not in the sense that bedeviled Papa George Bush. This show is about the eyes on our face. As our eyes deteriorate, most of us turn to glasses or contact lenses. Sure, lenses are a pain to clean and they will get lost or broken. Glasses are easy to misplace, they steam up, and they change the look of your face. A hassle to be sure, but reason enough to go to the operating table? For some people, the answer is yes, and they're spending thousands of dollars on a relatively new laser eye surgery technique called Lasik that promises perfect vision to many. With me to discuss the pros and cons of Lasik are Dr. J. Lustbader, Director of Cornea and Refractive Surgery at Georgetown University, and Jean Christensen, a Lasik patient. Welcome both of you to the Coffee House.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Lustbader, what does this surgery cure? What does it get rid of?
It can take care of several different types of eye problems. The most common one that we treat is myopia or nearsightedness, and we use the laser in that case to remove a small layer of tissue from the cornea to make the cornea flatter to reduce the nearsightedness. We also have the capability of reducing or eliminating astigmatism by reshaping the cornea, and recently we've gotten the approval from the FDA to treat farsightedness as well. And in farsightedness, the laser is used to steepen the center of the cornea to correct that condition. What we can't yet treat is a condition called presbyopia, which is the need for reading glasses or bifocals that most people develop in the early to mid-40s. That we can't yet treat directly with the laser.
Because that's less to do with the shape of the eyeball as much as the strength.
Exactly. It actually, the problem with presbyopia is in the lens of the eye, not in the cornea. So it's really a completely different structure that causes the problem.
Let's take a look at an actual procedure of Lasik. It's faster than one would think. Perhaps you can explain what's going on as
Sure.
it runs. Jean, why did you have this procedure done?
I had worn glasses for 40 years, and
They're just getting the eyelashes out of the way so they don't contaminate the area of
that's
the field.
the really uncomfortable part. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is the eyelid speculum that keeps the eyelids open. One concern that a lot of patients have is whether they're going to blink during the procedure, and actually you can't blink even if you wanted to because this instrument is in place.
Do you remember this part, Jean?
Yes, this.
They're making some marks on the surface of the cornea so that at the end of the procedure we can be sure that everything is lined up exactly right.
Did it hurt?
It's the anticipation more than the actuality. It didn't hurt until afterwards.
They're now applying the suction ring, which is part of the microkeratome, the instrument that actually creates the flap that we utilize in the Lasik procedure. They just checked the eye pressure to be sure that it had been raised sufficiently with this suction ring to allow the procedure to go on. And this is the microkeratome, and what they're doing is creating, basically using it like a plane to create a flap of tissue within the cornea, about a third of the way down within the depth of the cornea. And that's all, as long as it takes. The flap has now been created.
My goodness. You're awake for all of this, Jean. There's no general anesthetic.
You have to be awake to keep your eyes open and to focus on a red light that is in the machine that is doing the laser surgery.
Was it easy enough to focus on it?
Yes.
Good.
Now we're lifting the flap over to gain access to the central part of the cornea that's going to be treated with the laser.
Was there a local anesthetic that you had, or nothing?
They put drops in my eyes.
Anesthetic
Was that
drops,
an
that's it.
anesthetic? Okay.
They're making sure everything is lined up exactly right before the laser treatment starts. And now the laser's firing.
It's reducing the tissue.
Exactly. Each pulse of the laser removes an extremely small amount of cornea.
The pulse is the
Each
jerking
fire, each shot of the laser.
What's happening
And
there?
they're
It's
now
putting the flap back
irrigating the
there.
area, smoothing it out, and now putting the flap back in position.
Yeah, this part, I remember seeing a little tool come across my eye. It looked like a spatula.
That's exactly
And
what it is.
they were smoothing it back down.
You knew it was near the end of the procedure.
Yes.
And
How
now
long did it take?
rinsing out underneath to make sure there are no cells that may have got caught underneath there.
I think the whole thing takes less than 10 minutes.
But it's about 10 minutes per eye. And then this instrument smooths out the flap so you don't get any irregularities in it. And then some drops.
Sterile drops?
Usually some
there's the-
artificial teardrops at this point just to
Yes.
lubricate the
That-
surface.
That's the spatula?
No, that's actually a
There's the-
sponge that's just drying the fluid
Oh,
off on the
okay.
side.
After the procedure, you had to remain with your eyes closed for a while?
Just for about half an hour, I think, resting in a chair, and then they sent me home. You're not supposed to drive, so you have to have someone take you. And after it was over, I felt like I had been on a beach in the wind. It felt like there was a lot of sand in my eyes. So I went home and took a nap for 2 or 3 hours and got up and watched television.
And it was gone?
No problem. It was gone, yes.
And that's a pretty typical experience. Most people feel that kind of sensation maybe for 24 hours or so, but it tends not to be any more than that.
After 40 years of glasses then, Jean, you just had enough?
Yes, I could never wear contacts. I tried several times and I couldn't stand them. They hurt too much. Then when I developed presbyopia after reaching 40, I had 3 pairs of glasses. I had some for seeing distance, some for reading, and then I tried bifocals, which I couldn't ever decide where to look through, and they made me dizzy and sick to my stomach, and they cost $800. And I thought, well, if I'm going to spend $800 for 1 pair of glasses, why not spend $4,000 or $5,000 and get them fixed and not need them anymore?
The cost may seem very dramatic for just a few minutes, as of about, well, 10 minutes per eye. But there's a lot involved in the cost of the machinery, which is newly developed.
It's extremely expensive technology. The laser itself costs approximately $500,000. That microkeratome that we just saw cost $70,000 to $80,000. There's a royalty fee that has to be paid with every procedure. It's very expensive.
How much did your surgery cost, Jean?
It was about $5,000.
$5,000.
There are ways to get around that. You can't, insurance doesn't cover it, but you can use a health plan, a health savings plan at work, or borrow money from your mother.
The cost, the cost is coming down. What's the disadvantage? I mean, are these people with the lower cost just as good? They just happen to have less flashy places that they perform the surgery?
Well, yeah, I certainly don't want to criticize other people who are out there doing surgery, but one thing that I would suggest to anybody who's considering surgery, whether at one of the discount places or, for example, at a university, be to check to see very carefully who's performing the procedure, how much experience the surgeon has, how many cases he's done, what his outcomes have been, before just jumping in based on price alone.
That's what I did. I wanted a doctor who had done it thousands of times and had few or no complaints.
The certifications, I was very surprised how easy it is. Of course, you have to be trained as an ophthalmologist first, but can you explain how you get certification?
Obviously, you do have to be an ophthalmologist to start with, but the requirements are not much to get started doing the procedure. Doctors have to take a series of lecture courses and then do some practice cases on animal eyes or eyes that have come from the eye bank. And then they have to have their initial case with a patient proctored by an experienced surgeon. For example, they would come to our facility and I would proctor them. But that's all that's required. And after that, they're certified to do the procedure.
So only one procedure, and then they can be on a real-life person, and then they're off on their own.
That's right.
But Jean, you preferred the experience of 1,000 plus people.
Yes.
What are the disadvantages? Some people have complained about poor night vision, halos, starbursts.
As with any procedure, there's are some potential risks or complications that can occur. Fortunately, not very frequently with this procedure, but those things that you've mentioned are the most common things. A small percentage of people will notice those kinds of symptoms. Some glare, some halos, particularly at night. Now, most of the people who report that they have that say that it's quite mild, but a small percentage of people do have that.
I was going to say I had that, but it went away.
And about 98% of the time it does go away.
You can't undo the surgery, though, can you? I mean, once you've had it done, that's it.
That's
you only have one set of eyes, so
that's correct.
I guess you have to be very sure
you
want to do it. Jean, any regrets?
No.
Very
I
happy.
think it's wonderful to be able to see. After 40 years of not seeing, I can get up in the morning, see the clock, see where I'm going.
See clearly to drive.
Yes, the only thing that happens now, I do still have reading glasses for the newspaper, and I lose them all the time because
that's one set. And not
I never
three.
lost them before because I had to have them on. But it's a small regret.
Well, we have run out of time already. A very big thank you to Dr. Lustbader of Georgetown University and Jean Christensen for opening our eyes a bit on this cutting-edge surgery. That's all for this time. I'm Cathy Kristiansen, and this has been In Sickness and in Health.
Yet to come, choreographer Hellenius J. Wilkins, a Miriam Morsel Nathan poem, and Justice for Sale documentary film producer Rocky Kistner. But first...
Hello.
Howdy.
Great. That was great. I'd
Thank
like to welcome Rachel and Jacqui to the musical traditions segment of Tacoma Coffee House.
Thanks.
And it's a good thing I'm not prone to seasickness.
It's a good thing.
What was that you were playing?
That was an ocean drum.
I actually knew that, but
Came from your store.
Right. But I figured the viewers out there.
Yes, it's an ocean drum.
Okay. And you had a set of chimes over there?
Yes, chimes or little metal drums, as the sound man calls them.
Well, I think that you guys should change your names from Rachel and Jacqui to the Rachel and Jacqui event.
Okay.
Because you guys are more than just producing music. You're kind of a lifestyle. You're kind of a happening. If you remember the term
Okay.
when people would go to a happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, when we play at clubs, we bring instruments for people in the audience to participate with us. So,
Right.
so we are a happening.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Now, both of you were in the recently disbanded Big Village.
Yes.
And this is, you're now the offshoot of Big Village?
Yes.
How would
Yeah.
we?
The little suburb.
Right.
Or-
How would you, well, have you gone from world music to city music, or is it still a world music sound?
Well,
Yeah,
what
I
we
think
just
so.
did.
Yeah.
We incorporate a lot of different things, different elements in the music.
Right.
If you were sending out a promo pack to somebody and they'd never heard you, how would you describe, that would be a tough shot to describe your music, I think.
Yeah.
So you really don't compare to anything that's out there, which is
Right.
good.
Yeah.
But
Right. Well, the next piece we're going to do is a little less worldy. It has some Eastern feel to it, but it's got a little bit more.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, what was that we heard coming up? What do you
That
call
was
that?
Yemaya,
Okay.
which is
A chant.
a chant to Orisha.
Ancestor spirit.
Ancestor
Oh, yeah, I'm nodding my head.
Yes.
Okay. I have
Of the
no
ocean.
idea what
Of
you
the
guys are
ocean,
talking-
yes.
Yeah, of the ocean. Okay,
Yes,
right. All right.
We were calling her here.
It had a good.
Be with
It had a
us.
good feel to it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
Even
song.
not knowing what it was called or anything, just it's a little mesmerizing quality there.
Great.
And what are you going to take us out with?
This is called Euphoria. Euphoria.
Not Gloria.
Not Gloria.
Okay.
Although you
We
can
could
sing
sing
Gloria
along.
if you'd like to.
EUPH.
O-R-I.
Yeah, you can see why they shortened Gloria to Gloria.
I can see that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, take us home. Thank
Thanks.
Silly guy.
Should I come home to you? Should I belong to you? Can I, will I wait for tomorrow? Can I help you live through the danger? The moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya, the moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya. Follow the sacred fear. You know the meaning of this time. Mortars exploding beside them. Liquid kilos. Midnight mujahideen. The moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya. The moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya. Sand is leading me back to you. For ya, the moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya, the moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya, the moon on the sand is leading me back to you. For ya.
We got through the fast dances to get to the slow ones,
where it was okay to put our arms around some boy's cologne-drenched neck and press our face against his cheek, clammy as the White Tower counter. In dim, pine-paneled basements, we shuffled to Teen Angel and 16 Candles, our fumbling hands, electric signals, igniting us as flushed, we tried to look normal, even as we were trapped in pudgy, meaningless embraces. When the lights went white bright, the gangling lover was sweating. Those days when we were kissing for nothing, or not kissing at all, and when we knew too soon we would be alone again in our flower-papered rooms, we wanted to stay, to hold it, even if we had to imagine most of it. And later, when we went to the diner, we sat on cracked red vinyl stools, elbows propped on damp counters, and as waitresses mopped crumbs from the people before, we ordered hamburgers with onions, and Teen Angel, Can You Hear Me, stayed stuck in our heads.
I'm Liz Lerman, and welcome to In Step at the Coffee House. Race, gender, identity. Things we're used to reading about, writing about, see it in poetry. But you know, it can also be dance, especially in the hands of Hellenius J. Wilkins, my guest today. You may have seen his work in Missouri or New York City, but now he makes his home in the DC area. In 1995, he founded the Dimensions Dance Theater. He also teaches at various sites around town. We're very lucky to have him. Looking forward to talking with him myself. Welcome, Hellenius, to the Coffee House. Hellenius, I'm so glad you're here. You know, it's always great, I think, for a city to get new artists, but you've made a long trek to get here. Born in Louisiana, can you tell us how you ended up here?
Definitely. As you said, I was born in Louisiana, and I actually made my hair from Rochester, New York, where I lived for 6 years prior to moving to DC. And basically, while it was in part planned, it was kind of spontaneous because it literally came out to me waking up one morning in July of '95 in Rochester and saying, I felt I'd accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish and it was time to move on. And knew one friend here and called and said, I'm moving here. Yeah. And a week later, I was here looking for a place to stay and, you know, an opportunity to get things set. And I went on the road for 2 weeks and I was back to deal with whatever. But on the other end, in terms of planning, I always knew I wanted a dance company. And while I was in college at SUNY Brockport, I was doing research, extensive research about possible places to create a company where would be a good place for a grassroots organization to begin. And actually, among my options, Washington was one of them.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that.
Thank you.
And you know, it's interesting to sort of be a part of your world here, the little bit that I'm able to be. And one thing that really intrigues me is the way you describe your work, and you use this word daring dance. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Daring dance to me is pushing the envelope in a lot of ways, but most importantly, through dealing with the human condition. The wellspring for my choreography and for my art is the human condition. It's what I see every day. It's what I hear people saying, what I see them doing, how I see them interacting with others. Those things become the basis through which I develop work. So actually my work starts on a pedestrian level, and from there we add the element of emotions, raw emotions, and saying, okay, how is this affecting us, and how can we translate these raw emotions into movement?
Well, that's the question I think a lot of people have. I mean, I'm listening to you and I go, oh, I can just practically picture what's going on in rehearsals. Right. But you know, a lot of people, they say, okay, human condition, great, dance, get that.
Right.
Now, how do they turn that into a movement? Can you give an example?
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of ways, but the way I often explore it is through really developing almost a personal relationship with the people I'm working with in terms of dancers and collaborators. We'll sit and have lots of conversations on certain topics, or we'll have an opportunity to express our viewpoints on certain things. We'll have an opportunity to write maybe about what we're feeling, and then we take those writings and we start at that point. Well, when I feel, for instance, if I'm angry or if I'm nervous or really tense, there's a certain way I respond. It might be that I'm shaking or kind of like not focused and I walk around fast. Well, then that's my initial step.
Okay, so the key words there, for example, not focused. So if somebody is looking at the dance or something and they might see a character moving around the space in an unfocused way, for you that's like a translation.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, maybe we can take a look at some of your work, and while we're watching it, you could describe some of those translations for people, because I think that really helps people. Great, so let's see. Here we go. I'm really looking forward, because you know, for myself too, this key of moving from idea to movement is also one of the reasons why I like to do it.
Of course.
Because it tells me, here we go. Here it is.
This here, what we're seeing in particular, is a piece titled The Forbidden Zone, actually, and it's part of my brand new project, Edge of Uncertainty. And in the case of The Forbidden Zone, the mode I went to is dealing with private space and the invasion of it. So here again, those issues that I'm dealing with, nervousness and tension and paranoid, and sort of like the instability, the lack of stability that exists with all of the jumping, and all of sort of like hear no evil, see no evil type expressions is generating or creating an environment where things are not comfortable or I'm concerned about stuff. The movements are generally very powerful, very dynamic.
Do you have a sense about maybe how the group is working, say, as opposed to the individual in the group? You want to talk about that for a second?
In terms of this one particular individual in the solo part, her role, actually, I should say in general, and bring it down, it's almost like the perfect environment that we've created here for ourselves to operate is that we can all be a victim or we can all be an attacker. So we don't know who's after who at that particular point. And in the case of that one particular person, it was like, who is my attacker? I'm the victim here, and I'm pushing away, and I'm pulling away, and I'm fighting this person head on. Then trying to find or discover or realize who the attacker is.
That's very interesting. Let's just get real specific. So there's that fist flying in the air. Now, did that come out of what, an improvisation? Or did you say to somebody, you know what, we need a fist here?
Improvisation, definitely improvisation. There's those places where you say fighting moment, you know, what is it to be bold? How do we stand when we're being bold and we're confident about ourselves? And for some people, that's power, you know, showing a fist. I'm grounded and I'm in control right now. And that's sort of how it came up. And it's like, all right, well, if that's the case and we're fighting something, then one way to show that we're getting control or taking more control away and getting away from feeling in the role of the victim is to show that we're this confident in this confident place.
Right. You know, I know from just this description now how collaboratively you work with the dancers, but I know you also have collaborations that are key to all aspects of your work. Can you talk about what that's like?
Definitely. The work I often describe in general as interactive art. That's really where I am, where I collaborate with a visual artist as well as composers and musicians in various levels. And the goal is not for these collaborators to per se strengthen the dance or make the dance better, but that they take the theme or the focus of the project and add their own personal expression into it. So all of a sudden, it's a conversation between the three of us. So it's very interactive in that the dance is responding to what's happening musically, and that also we're sort of responding to the forces of nature, per se, by what's on the stage in terms of set. So it's a whole dialogue going on that all three combined together make for this larger fulfilling project.
This, I think, is such a key element of dance at the beginning of this century, which is, and art really too, that although obviously you're the individual driving this and you have a vision, we really are in dialogue with lots of people. It's not just a solo pursuit any longer. It's these connections. So I know you're working on some new stuff. What's happening? What are you thinking about these days?
Project-wise, I'm really putting a lot of emphasis into my latest project, The Edge of Uncertainty, which is an evening-length work that actually premiered last year. And I say premiere, but I often look at it too as a first draft premiere. Still building. And that's a work that focus on certainty and vulnerability in human relationships, which is really intense and actually it stems from, again, dealing with the pedestrian human condition element. It stems from my being bitter due to losing my grandmother, which is a project that's actually dedicated to my grandmother. But it was to create a space where people can come in and feel like it's almost like a therapy space. It's a very safe ground to explore and deal with my feelings about dealing with death and dealing with change, massive change, and how it affects my life. So what I did, I created a space in terms of, as far as studio space is concerned, where we all could come in and talk about those issues and say, this is how it makes me feel right now, and right now it's okay for me to be angry, or it's okay for me to just walk around the room right now.
I'm sure that people right now who are listening are wishing that they could be part of this process, because to be able to have a physical, mental, and communal way to address these things that are, of course, a part of all of our lives. Short of that, they can come see your work, which I really, really hope that people will do, because you have a really unique voice, and you and your dancers bring a beautiful visual image to the stage. So I'm encouraging everybody to stay in touch with Hellenius J. Wilkins. Thanks for joining me in the coffee house. I hope you'll all be able to see some of Hellenius's work in the months and years to come. I'm Liz Lerman, and this has been In Step.
Hi, and welcome to a second look at the coffee house, a chance for journalists to talk about their work. When most of us gaze out on the great sea of politics, the islands of integrity are few and far between. There's always been one big island, the judiciary, the judges in their black billowing robes, men and women who generally rise above political influence. However, according to the PBS show Frontline, the judiciary is now the target of a new form of influence buying. Major change, major implications. Rocky Kistner, one of the show's producers, is here in the studio to help us take a second look. Hi, Rocky. Welcome.
Great to be here.
There have always been crooked judges, guys on the take from the mob, right? But you're talking about something much more systematic, a wholesale approach to influencing the judiciary.
Right. I mean, it's really more or less sort of a legalized form of corruption, if you will. People don't think of judges having to raise money when they are elected, but they have to raise tremendous amounts of money in some cases. And what's happened in the last 10 years or so is that the amount of money being raised is so high and getting higher that it's caused real problems for the judiciary and the confidence in the courts.
Right. In essence, the kind of influence peddling that's existed at the at the executive level and at the legislative level is now leapfrogged over to the judicial level.
Exactly. The state courts in about 39 states of the U.S., some level of judges are elected, and in those elections, judges have to raise money, and who do they raise money from? Well, very often the very lawyers who bring cases before them, so that does raise issues of conflict of interest.
Okay, we have a clip here from your show, which is a case study in Pennsylvania that you looked at. You want to set the stage for this?
Right. In Pennsylvania, we followed a business group there that has gotten quite active in raising money for judges that match their interests. And so we talked to one of the groups, the Pennsylvanians for Effective Government, about their efforts to raise money.
Okay, let's take a look.
It takes over $1 million these days to get elected to Pennsylvania's Supreme Court.
and there are no limits on how much an individual can give.
Hi, Bill Cook, how are you?
This group, a business lobby, is raising money to bankroll candidates for the court.
Nice to meet you. Their Congressman builds more roads. We actually got involved in judge campaigns back in 1989. We realized from our old Civics 101 that there's 3 stools of government. One is the executive, obviously, the legislature, both of which we play very well in. And in Pennsylvania, the odd number of years are the judicial elections. In 93, 95, and 97, we got involved in Supreme Court campaigns. Senator, how are you? Congratulations. Thank you.
Having fared well with the state legislature, Bill Cook's outfit is now determined to elect a state Supreme Court, which would be sympathetic to business interests.
Generally, the idea is it's a whole lot easier to elect people who think like you than it is to educate them once they've been elected. And there are issues that we want the legislature to pass, that we want the governor to sign into law, and we would certainly like to have justices find those issues constitutional when they come before them.
The perception that special interests are buying favor with judges prompted the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to conduct a public opinion poll.
What we found is that people believe that money buys judicial favor. 89% believe that most of the time, some of the time, or all of the time, judicial decisions are affected by monetary contributions. If we had no other data than that, we would know we had a problem.
So there's no shame in this, right? They just tell you right up front, we're buying judges, we're buying influence.
Absolutely, and you have to be fair to say that it happens on both sides of the aisle. In this case, the business community and the trial lawyer community, who've put in substantial amounts of money to elect the judges that they think are most match their interests. But what's happened in recent years is that the business community particularly has stepped forward in a greater way and raised the stakes somewhat.
What kind of money are we talking about?
Well, at the Supreme Court level, the state Supreme Court level, in some of the larger states, you're talking millions. In some cases, $2 million for a judge to have to raise before he can campaign across the state.
Right. So, in other words, all of a sudden you have to play at that high financial level if you want to get elected. So you're caught as a candidate, you've got to go and accept this kind of money, I take it.
Exactly. And for a judge, there are certain rules that they can't go out and campaign and specifically talk about issues, that how they would rule on specific issues. There are, in most states, very strict rules about that, but what ends up is, in most cases, that judges have to go out, shake the money tree, and the people who have the money most often are lawyers who come before them. In Texas, we examined the races down there that are some of the most expensive in the nation, and there was a poll done by the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court in Texas, where almost half of the Supreme Court justices and all the judges in the state thought that campaign contributions influenced their own decisions. So it's pretty telling.
Yeah, that is telling. I thought the Louisiana example that you spent a lot of time on the show, a small example in a way, but very telling, because maybe you can explain it to us, but there the state Supreme Court changed the rules. These law students from Tulane were a thorn in the side of the petrochemical industry down there,
and they were essentially shut out by the state Supreme Court. It's a complicated story, but essentially what happened was that in Louisiana, where environmental rules are fragile at best, and the chemical industry is very powerful, the Tulane Environmental Law Clinic, the students, were given special rights to represent poor people and indigent people, and were being very effective, in some cases shutting out large chemical companies from opening plants because they hadn't done the proper environmental studies. And the business community lobbied very hard to have the state Supreme Court change the rule, and they did, just before the election of the Chief Justice, who Pascal Calagaro, who at the time was trying to curry favor with the business community because of the election, and successfully was reelected with the help of the business community.
Right. Yeah, and I thought you did a good job of following the money trail there. It went directly from the folks who wanted to eliminate the Tulane influence and money to the judge. The judge did what they wanted. He got elected. Everybody was happy except for the people who used to be represented by the Tulane students.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, the business community was split somewhat, and they did support another candidate as well. But there was a sense that the Chief Justice was under pressure to get support in the business community, and he was successful.
So, is there any reform on the horizon? I mean, we've talked about reform of the campaign laws for Congress and elsewhere, but...
Well, there is, and in our program we had 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices speak to us about this problem, Justice Breyer and Kennedy, and there's a general sense across the nation that there is a problem with this amount of money being raised. In some states there's an appointment process where judges are appointed by either by the state government or by a panel of lawyers, and the bar associations are trying to develop rules and some kind of uniform system to put judges in place, because clearly this system is broken.
Right. Yes, it is. Okay, well, thanks, Rocky. Thanks to Rocky Kistner for joining me in the coffee house. Eternal vigilance, isn't that what Patrick Henry said? I think that's the lesson here. Let's all keep a sharp eye. I'm Howard Cohen, and this has been A Second Look.
That's it for the February edition. See you next month in La Coffee House.